Guys, it's Jess from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my October wrap-up. I read 23 books this month. Now, a lot of them were audiobooks. I was listening to a lot of audiobooks. I now have Audible Escape, the romance package, and it's amazing, and I've been listening to so many other books that I probably wouldn't have listened to before. Anyways, I have a lot to get to, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk about what I read. The first one's on audio, and that is To Love Jason Thorne by Ella Mays. This one is a older brother's best friend, but he moved and became an actor, and she wrote a best-selling novel while she's in college, and she self-published it, and he's gonna star as the main character in the movie, and it's actually inspired by him because she always loved him when she was little, and so now they're working together, and he sees her as more than just like the best friend's little sister. He has a bad reputation, so there's also a marriage of convenience in here. It has all the tropes that I love. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I love Ella May so much. I've heard book 2 is even better, so I definitely need to listen to that one soon, and I cannot rave about this book enough. I loved it so much. The next few books I read for a fun video I did of where I stalked my favorite booktubers and only read what they were currently reading, so I'll link that video down below if you want to watch it. But the first book I picked up was Surfing and Dove by Shelby Maharin. I still don't know how to say that last name, but this one is about a witch, and she has kind of run away from her people, her coven, and there are different types of witches, and she is hiding among the people because if you're a witch, you are definitely killed, and she kind of stumbles into the path of a witch hunter, and they have to get married for a specific reason, and it's really fun. It is kind of like, I don't know how to describe it because it's definitely a new adult fantasy, and the love interest, the guy who's the witch hunter, is very serious and very dedicated to his job. It's like a select few are even given his position, so he just takes it super seriously. She is very much the girl that I don't like in books. She loves to break the rules, she loves to make people uncomfortable, and she just, I feel like since she is a witch and she's trying to hide herself, she puts too much attention on herself. The ending was great. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I really cannot wait to pick up book 2 whenever it comes out, but I do think it was a lot of fun, and if you like kind of witchy books, you'll enjoy this one. The next book I read for that video was The Whisper Man by Alex North. This is a thriller that's been going around a lot. I also did a 3 thriller review, which I'll link down below, where I reviewed this book and 2 others. This one's about the Whisper Man, who years ago terrorized this neighborhood by whispering to kids and kidnapping them and killing them. And now he's in jail, but someone else is now doing it, and they don't know if it's a copycat, they don't know what it is, so the cop goes to visit the old Whisper Man to try to figure out who's doing it now. And it also takes perspective of a man and his son who just moved into town, and his son is hearing whispers. So I thought this would be more thrilling than it was. It definitely had a few very scary scenes, but it was pretty boring, and the ending was nothing special. The ending was one of those endings that makes sense, and you're just like, yep, that totally makes sense. I could see how that happened. And it didn't shock me. It didn't like make me creeped out or freak out or anything. It was just like a mediocre read, so I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read The Deal by Elle Kennedy because Kayla from Books and Lala was actually reading this, so I buddy read it with her secretly, and this is a reread for me. It's Garrett and Hannah's book. Garrett's a superstar hockey player, and he's failing a class that everybody's failing except for somehow Hannah. She kind of cracked the code on what this philosophy professor wants on the essays and the midterms and exams. So Garrett asks her to tutor him, and in return he will fake date her to get the attention of a football player she really likes. Hannah has been hurt in her past, so she is very wary when it comes to men and relationships, and she kind of feels like she's broken in a way, and so obviously Garrett and Hannah fall for each other, and it's very adorable. I loved this so much. I love my reread, 5 out of 5 stars. I forgot so much that happened in this because I read it when it came out around that time, so I can't wait to reread the rest of the series, but I love this series, and you need to read it if you haven't. Next, I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This comes out in November. I was sent a review copy from the publisher. I got an ARC, and then I also got a finished copy, so thank you so much to Avon Books. And this is my first Talia Hibbert, and I don't know what I've been doing, but it's not going to be my last because this is so adorable. Talia Hibbert's British, so this is British. Our main character has what is it called? Fibromyalgia. She has a chronic condition where she's just always in pain, and she is in a near-death experience in the beginning, so then she makes a list of things she wants to do to get a life and enlists the help of their landlord, who has a motorcycle, kind of the bad boy looking reputation, and she butts heads with him, but she's like, you need to help me because one of the things on her list is to ride a motorcycle. And he helps her, they banter, they bicker, but it's super adorable, and I loved the love interest. He was so cute. He loved his mom. I love a guy who loves his mom and like treats her with respect. And so this was adorable, adorably British, just like the language they use was adorable, and I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Recommend every romance reader to pick this up and read it when it comes out. And I really like the representation of someone with a chronic illness because she really delved into figuring out her illness, how everybody treated her. Her sisters are in this and they're amazing, and book 2 is actually on Edelweiss, and the cover is up there, but I don't know if they've actually revealed the cover yet. So I'm scared to share it, but someone shared it with me, and if you want to check and you are a reviewer and you're on Edelweiss, check out the book 2 for this series. Next on Kindle Unlimited, I picked up Road to Winter by Lily Archer. This is book 2 in this fantasy series. This girl, she is like kidnapped and taken to the fantasy realm, and she immediately is like fated mates with this Winter King, and they're very short, so it just really feels more like installments instead of separate books. And so as a book itself, this one I feel like was really lacking, and I was kind of bored, and I wanted more romance, and there's still barely any romance because she's still really like, I don't belong here, I want to go back to Earth, I want to go back home, I need to get back to my college and like be a student or whatever. And so there's really not a lot of romance yet, and so it definitely feels like it's dragging because you should read these like as a full story all together. I wish the author did make it all just a book, so I felt like it was cohesive and not just like, here's a point, here's a point, here's a point, and I'm just like reading chapters at a time. I'd rather read the whole time. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars just because it felt like this one was lackluster and I wanted more romance. But it's still fun. I gave book 1 4 stars, so maybe I'll pick up the next one soon. Next, I listened to the audio of Slammed by Colleen Hoover. This was a reread for me. I haven't read this since I was in college. I feel like, and that was when I went to Myrtle Beach, which was early in college because my family went to Myrtle Beach like 4 years in a row. Maybe it was 3 years in a row. And it's been since like sophomore year of college. And this one is, I think, Colleen's first book she ever published. Our main character meets her next door neighbor who's raising his brother, and she has a little brother the same age, so they hang out a lot, and then they go on a date, and they are just like are really smitten with each other. And then she shows up to high school, and he is the teacher of hers. And it doesn't really make sense logically as a teacher myself that he is a teacher because he's student teaching, but so he's in college, but they like are short staffed, so he just like teaches himself a class, and then once he's done with his student teaching, he'll take over that role and have the job. And I'm like, as student teaching, you don't teach a class yourself. Like, you literally have I forget what it's called, but like your mentor teacher, the teacher whose classroom you're visiting and teaching in is there with you, and you are teaching their students. And yeah, you get to teach a lot, and like by the end I was like full on teaching, and she was just like there, or she'd go run like errands in the school, like go into the mail room, make copy something. Like, you aren't left to teach by yourself. But that made me be able to disconnect this from reality as a teacher myself, reading a student-teacher romance, which should never happen in real life, but I really enjoy this. I gave it 4 to 5 stars, I think. It's just like a really good romance, and I did feel like it went by fast. Like, the audiobook felt short, even though this isn't a short book, so it's good though. If you want your Colleen Hoover romance that has some angst and definitely emotional at the end, you should pick this up. Then I read Fallen Saint by Monica James. Monica James did reach out and send me the ebook copy of this book and the next book, so thank you so much to Monica for sending me copies of your book, but that doesn't sway my opinion at all when reading the series. She just saw how much I loved book 1 because I was raving about it. This one, our main character is kidnapped, and she's on her honeymoon with her husband. She's a virgin. She was waiting until marriage, and on the honeymoon, literally when they arrive at their honeymoon location, she is kidnapped by some Russian people, and there's this one guy who really, she sees something in him, and his name is Saint, and she's kind of falling for him, but bad things are happening to her. She's on this boat going to God knows where, and then the ending was a cliffhanger, and this one definitely takes a much different direction. There are new villains in here, and we're not on that boat anymore, so a lot of times the first book was secluded just to that boat and her surviving and something happening after that. This one, the main people who have kidnapped her come into the picture and who Saint worked for, so it definitely took quite a different turn. So I did give it 4 to 5 stars. I liked book 1 a lot more, but I can see why the author did make the choices she made. I'm very, very intrigued to pick up book 3. I'm definitely gonna do that this month, hopefully, to finish out this trilogy because I have to know what happens next, but I was still flying through this book and I couldn't put it down. Then for my book club at school with my kids, I did read Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. I did not read this during the hype because Fangirl's not my favorite. I gave Fangirl, I think, 4 stars when I read it. It was good, but I wasn't obsessed, and everyone was like, if you like Fangirl, you have to read this. And Eliza actually has her own webcomic that like millions of people read. She makes so much money off of it, and she posts every week to the page, and she has best friends online. As someone who is so prominent online, I put a lot of my time into YouTube and Instagram, and I've made some of my best friends through that. Like literally my best friends are from online and they live across the country. So I could definitely relate to Eliza, and a new boy moves into school and he actually ends up being the most popular fan fiction writer for her webcomic, and she befriends him but doesn't tell him who she is. So I love this book so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It read so fast, even though it's like 400 pages. It was so good. Eliza was so relatable. She just liked to keep to herself, but she had so many friends online, and like her parents were like, Eliza, like put your phone down and come to the real world. She's like, that's my real world. I'm talking to people, I'm having conversations with them. And I didn't have online friends in high school. That was not really normal when I was in high school, even though that wasn't too long ago. I graduated in 2011, but the online community has blown up so much that like everybody can have best friends online, and it's actually best friends. Like you are literally friends with these people, even if you might not have met them before. So relatable, 5 out of 5 stars. It was so cute. I'm telling all my students they have to read it. Delves into some very dark places with our characters, but I loved it. The next one I just read on audio randomly because I saw it on Audible Escape and I was like, sure, why not? And that is Slay by Laura Lynn Page. My sister actually picked this up too this month, and we didn't know we were reading the same book because I listened to this with this cover and she has a different cover of the book, I think. And this is about a woman who, she like cons people even though she's super rich, and she is kind of like in a weird state. Like she is single and she doesn't really date, and her last boyfriend is now married and expecting, so she just like, it's like, I don't know how she feels about her life, but then this man approaches her and asks her to marry him because he is her father's rival, and so she decides she wants to, but she also has this play on him, and she plays other people, and it was interesting. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I wasn't like too interested in this, and the end was like a bizarre twist that I'm like, really? Like, I don't think we were given any hint to that. Things are just weird that I don't want to spoil, but I give it 3 out of 5 stars. I was not too impressed. And I do have a vlog for Spookathon, so I'll link that down below. And the first book I read was The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This is my Book of the Month edition. If you're interested in Book of the Month, I have a referral link down below, so if you sign up, you get 1 free book and I get 1 free book. But I typically am getting a lot of thrillers through there because I don't really read thrillers. And this one is about a woman in Scotland, and she takes a nannying position for this family in this old smart house. So it's like an old house that they repurposed and redesigned because they're architects and made it into a smart house. She's babysitting these 2 little girls and kind of their 15, 16-year-old sister who's away at school. The parents leave all the time, and like 2 days into her being there, they leave her alone with the kids. Creepy things happen, and it's epistolary, so it is our main character writing letters to a lawyer saying she did not kill one of the children. And she tells the story because apparently one of the kids died. So this one was definitely creepy. I couldn't read it alone at night in my own home because I'm like, every noise I heard, I was like, is someone here? This is terrifying. But I do feel like it was a little slow, and the ending, in my opinion, was pretty obvious. I am not a thriller reader, so I shouldn't be able to really guess thriller endings, I feel like, since I'm not exposed to all the possible endings, but I felt like, I was like, yeah, that was my guess, and it was right. So I wasn't too shocked. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was still really entertaining, but it was slow, so keep that in mind. The next book I listened to on audio, and that is Reap by Tilly Cole. This has both books in one. I loved Raise. I read it last year. It was one of my favorite books of the year. Reap was boring. These are about these underground fighters who are stolen from their homes, and they are pumped full of drugs and kept in cages and bred to fight each other and fight to the death, and they are bet on and get people a lot of money. So Raise was a guy from the first book, and then Reap was someone that Raise wanted to save, and he falls in love with Raise's sister, and so he's being kept at one of their houses, and she starts to kind of fall for him by watching him and brings back his humanity. This was so boring. I felt so bad, but it was so boring. Like, he was in the house for a while, and then they just kind of like hung out together. They didn't really even like talk about things or get to know each other. They just like all of a sudden liked each other, and there's only really action in the beginning and the end. I loved Raise because there was so much action, but there's barely any action in here, and the ending wrapped up too fast. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Super disappointed considering I loved the first book, but we'll see if I pick up the rest of the series. There are 2 more books and if I enjoy them. Then I read No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is one of my dad's favorite books. This is also in that 3 thriller review video I did, and this was amazing. I love this. This is probably gonna be one of my favorite reads of the year. This is a thriller, and our main character is driving home from college because her mom has cancer. It's a huge snowstorm, but she decides to drive because she has to see her mom in the hospital, and it gets too bad to continue, so she pulls off to a rest stop, and when she gets out of her car, she sees a little girl in a cage in the car next to her. So she has to go into this rest stop and figure out who did that, and there are 4 people in this rest stop, and this is one of the fastest paced books I've ever read. Page 50, you are given like some answers and you're freaking out, and you're just like freaking out the whole time, and the ending gets gory, and it was just so good, and I couldn't stop reading, and I was freaking out. I read this in a day and a half because I literally could not put it down, and the ending was shocking. Everything that happened was shocking. Even though I should have thought of something, the author did a good job of like distracting me and then realizing like, oh my god, wait a second, and it was so good. I was shocked so many times. I heard it's gonna be a movie. I cannot wait for that, and if you want a good thriller, you have to pick this up. Then I picked up Born Madly by Trisha Wolfe. This is book 2 in this duet. I don't know, it's the Darkly Madly duet. The first one is Born Darkly, the second one's Born Madly, and it is a dark romance between a psychologist and a serial killer, and I can't tell you anything about this book without spoiling book 1. Book 1 ends on a pretty big cliffhanger, but it was really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't as good as book 1, but it definitely took a different direction as book 1 did, because our main character, the psychologist, has a lot of secrets revealed in book 1 that really show about her character in book 2. So that's all I can say, but I definitely recommend this duet if you like a dark romance and kind of like a Harley Quinn Joker vibes romance. You would love this. Next on Audible Escape, I ended up listening to Storm by Carrie Ann Cole. I was giving Carrie Ann Cole another chance. I read one of her books, Thorne, and I wasn't a fan. The romance kind of creeped me out because it was between a girl and her dad's best friend who kind of pretty much helped raise her, so that was a bit too much for me, but this one's a rock star romance. Storm's the main character, and he ends up finding this girl who is pretty much stranded in a snowstorm, and because she got lost because of her GPS, and they get stuck in a car together for like 3 days, and then finally make it to his house in the mountains and spend another day there before she can get help and get her car fixed. And she doesn't know who he is. She has a boyfriend of like 8 years at home, and he's dragging his feet to propose, and she's kind of like in that stage where she's like, is this really who I'm spending my life with? Life's kind of boring. Do we really even love each other anymore? And so she's questioning that, and it's so good. Definitely love triangle, but I loved when they were trapped together. So it's like forced confinement romance, which was really good. And if you don't like cheating, there's just a little bit of cheating going on in here, so keep that in mind. But I really enjoyed this. I give it 4 to 5 stars. I was super pleasantly surprised, and I loved how he was a rock star and how she learned out who's a rock star, and now I want my own oversized Ashes and Embers sweatshirt. I wonder if she sells them. She probably does, because I love this so much. I gave it 4 to 5 stars, and I definitely recommend you guys checking this book out. Then I read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I teach this to my Enriched 10 classes, which is honors 10th grade English. I love this book so much. I geek out over it every time we read it, and I always plan it around October, Halloween time, because it is a pretty paranormal, creepy book, and it's awesome. It's a guy who sells his soul to look young, so he does not age, but his portrait ages and shows all of his sins in his portrait, and he gets to be young forever. So really, really good book. 5 out of 5 stars. One of my favorite classics. You should read it. Then I read With Every Heartbeat by Linda Cage. This was my pick what I read next for September, and I read half of it in September, then had to put it down because of all these videos I was doing and vlogs I was doing. This is book 3 in the Forbidden Men series. This is book 4. Book 4? I think this is book 4. Yes, this is definitely book 4. You definitely have to read these in order. This one was really, really, really good. It's Hamilton's book, and so we know him because of the other books, and we see all of the Forbidden Men guys. He's a bartender at the bar that a lot of them work at, and our main character comes from an abusive household, and she runs away to go to college with her best friend. She doesn't tell her dad she's been planning it for a long time, so she just hops in her car and leaves and goes to college, and her best friend is dating Hamilton. His name's Quinn, and her best friend's actually dating him, and so she feels bad that she's kind of falling in love with her her best friend's boyfriend. And Quinn definitely feels things for her, even though he's in love with his girlfriend, and they're both really confused. And this was good. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. I will say I really don't like the atrociously horrible mean girl trope, and that's what her best friend really is. You're just like, Quinn, why are you dating her? She's a mean girl, and she does malicious things, and she literally ruins people's relationships. She goes out of her way to be malicious and mean, and it was kind of over the top to me, but I still really love the romance, and I gave it 4 to 5 stars. I love Linda Cage so much. You need to read the series. It's so good, and I can't wait to continue on because I need book 5 with 10. It's gonna be so good. Next, I read Raphael by Tilly Cole for the Ravished by Romance book club. This one is a very dark romance, and it's a group of guys who were all kidnapped basically as orphans by these priests, and they were tortured and raped and abused because they had to get the evil out of them, and they finally escape all together, and they all represent the 7 fallen angels and the 7 deadly sins. And so this is Raphael's story, and his thing is that he likes to choke people to kill them because it all stems from what they dealt with in their pasts. And the main guy, Gabriel, he's the kind of like the leader of the 7. He finds tasks and people for them to kill because they all have this innate need to kill people, but he finds bad people for them to kill, so like kind of is okay for them to kill them, I guess. And Raphael ends up falling for a nun. That's all I can say. It was very dark, and I wasn't like the biggest fan of the romance, and there were some things that I felt like didn't plausibly make sense, but I give it 4 to 5 stars. I liked it. It's Tilly Cole, but she really goes there, and it's dark. And I didn't know that the priests were still a thing in here. They had a novella about their past with the priests. The priests are back in here, so I was raised Catholic, so it's kind of uncomfortable reading about that, but if you're okay with religious things happening in the book, with religious figures in here, then go for it. I still give it 4 to 5 stars. It was good. Then on Audible Escape, I picked up Vandal by Carrie and Cole. This is book 2 in the series. Storm is book 1. This is about another guy in the band, and they all the books so far that I've read take place on the same timeline. So a lot of times books take place like one after another. These all occur concurrently, so at the same time. And so Vandal is dealing with the death of his daughter. He was driving, got into an accident, and killed her, and killed the driver of the other car, which was the husband of the wife who was in the car as well. And he ends up tracking her down and not telling her who he is and having a sub-dom relationship with her. This book was weird. It was okay. I give it 3 to 5 stars. I think the relationship was super weird. The ending was bizarre. Like, I did not get that ending. It was more like 2.5. I just was not a fan of this, and I was just listening to it to get it over with. This is very dark. There's cutting in here. There's talk of suicide in here, so keep that in mind. But yeah, definitely not my favorite in the series. I would have skipped this one if I could. Then I read an Arc of Gypsy King by Devney Perry. This is a motorcycle romance, and our main character is a journalist, and she's coming back to her hometown to work for her father's newspaper, and she's determined to figure out what happened to the Gypsy men, the Gypsy Kings. I don't remember. It's Gypsy something, and I always call it the Gypsies, but it's something else, the motorcycle club, and they had disbanded years ago, and she doesn't believe that they're disbanded, so she's trying to get to the bottom of it. She runs into the old president, and they definitely butt heads, but there's an instant attraction, and then there's a murder that happens, and they are blaming it on the ex-president's dad, and she's determined to prove that he did it, even though the son is saying he didn't. They start this hateful, lustful relationship, and she's still trying to figure out that murder. The romance, I feel like, didn't really have enough time to develop when they first acted on their feelings. I'm like, you literally hate each other, you're literally enemies, yet you're gonna go at each other. That didn't really make sense to me, and I did enjoy the rest of the book, and there was a lot of mystery, and there was some heart-pumping moments, but then the mystery was never solved. That's not really a spoiler. I just want to say the ending, nothing is resolved, and we are gonna have to wait another book to figure out the answers. I typically don't see that in series. A lot of times these series are standalones, so something's resolved and a next couple gets the next book. I'm excited for the next couple because they did set that up, but we still don't know the answer to the mystery. I'm like, why'd I go through this whole book and not get the answer? That bothered me, so I gave it 4 to 5 stars. The end is near, I promise. I have 3 books left, and the next 2 I read in a reading vlog, so I'll link that down below, and the first one is The Bromance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams. This comes out on the 5th, and this one is so cute. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I just have to say that. I can't help but smile when I talk about this. Our main character is a guy whose wife tells him she wants a divorce, and so he goes to his friends. He's a professional baseball player. They have twins together, so he goes to his friends and is like, guys, like, my wife wants to divorce me. What do I do? So they're like, welcome to the book club, and they have a book club where they read historical romances, romantic suspense books. They read romance together to solve the problems of their relationship. So they choose a book about a married couple who's having problems and how the guy has to like court his wife to win her. And so our main character kind of takes things from the book and uses it to get his wife back, and it's so cute. I loved every second of this. It's just like a nice, fun romance. Don't expect too much from it. Just expect something super adorable that you're just gonna love, especially if you love romances. Like, I loved it, and they have the historical romance actually like in here as chapters, which I loved, comparing it to what he's going through. 5 out of 5 stars, could not recommend this enough. Then I read Blitz by Lexa Martin, which is book 3 in the playbook series, but they can be read as standalones. And this one comes out in December, and I got an arc of it from Berkeley Romance. I also got an arc of Romance Book Club by Berkeley too. That's just a finished copy because it comes out soon, that they sent me. So thank you, Berkeley, for the arcs, but this one was definitely a miss for me. I gave book 1 4 stars, I think I gave book 2 5 stars, and this one 3 stars. Our main character owns the bar that all the girls go to in the previous books, and they're filming kind of like a Real Housewives show on the wives of the football team that the series kind of revolves around. So the first 2 women fall in love with football players, and then Maxwell is a football player that comes into her bar, and he's this silent, just like thoughtful type, and he destroys her bar. And then he like grovels, and they start to hang out and have a relationship, but she never figures out why he does it until the end. And I'm like, I would never ever ever be able to be with someone if they completely like freaked out and like smashed up a place and didn't know why. And I feel like I still don't know anything about Maxwell. I don't know anything about himself, his past, except for what we learned at the end, or like what he likes, what he does. I just feel like there's no connection to him. And our main character girl, I don't even remember her name, Bryn, she's very much the, I'm in my 30s, but like I don't act like an adult. I hate to go grocery shopping. I don't do my laundry. My 20 pairs of shoes are by my front door, and I'm like, you can be an adult and be single and be functioning and do laundry. I hate that trope, so I was not a fan of her, and she, like, the writing was weird in this one, and I just didn't like Bryn's voice and what she like told us. She told us a lot. It was a lot of telling and not enough showing, in my opinion, so definitely a low 3 for me. Was not impressed. And the last book I read was on Audible, and that is Lucas by Carrie and Cole. This is book 3 in that series, and it got worse. Lucas is pretty young. I think he's 25. He owns a tattoo shop, and he's also like sometimes in the band. He plays violin. And so this woman comes in, and her husband, she just figured out, is cheating on her. She's like 36. She has an 18-year-old, so she was pregnant at 18 with her husband, and she found out her husband's cheating on her after 18 years, and they're getting a divorce, and so she decides to get a tattoo and kind of starts a relationship with this 25-year-old. So it is an age gap with a younger guy, which I liked. The ending was ridiculous. So ridiculous. Like, I hate it when people accuse people of doing something because of miscommunication, and they should know that that person would never do that, but then they believe it anyways, and I'm like, really? He would never do that. But okay, go ahead and say that he does it and ruin your whole relationship, and now you can never trust each other again. It was annoying, and it was pretty boring throughout the middle, so I give it 2 out of 5 stars. And those are all the books that I read in October. Whew. Let me know down below what you read and what your favorite books are and what you were excited for me to read. I would love to know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.